The Problem of Duality, Monistic Solutions by J Van Der Leeuw, read by Dave Marsland of Cardiff Theosophical Society. The Problem of Duality, Monistic Solutions. It is impossible to imagine that mind can influence body or body influence mind, energy act on mass or mass on energy, unless there is something which unites the two terms in a higher unity or reduces them to one. If matter and spirit, body and mind, were a real duality, each being essentially and fundamentally different from the other, it would be unthinkable not only that they should influence one another, but even in any way be aware of one another's existence. Since their interaction is a fact in our universe, we must come to the conclusion that they are not true opposites, entirely different from one another, having nothing in common, but that there must be a unity underlying them somehow. Our dual universe must be seen as a monistic universe, however we achieve that monism. The most obvious ways of overcoming the dualism in our universe is to acknowledge only one of its two terms as real, and to look upon the other as secondary, produced in some way by the first. Thus the materialist looks upon mind as a function of matter, the idealist upon matter as but an idea in mind. There is a type of man who is intensely concentrated on this world around him, ever seeking to explore that world more fully, to discover and observe more facts about it, so that ultimately, by learning the laws governing that outer universe, mankind may gain a control over its environment. That type of man may be of the noblest, may be utterly dedicated to the service of humanity, willing to sacrifice life itself in the pursuit of truth, ready to be tortured and burnt at the stake in adherence to that which he knows to be true, and yet, in his intense and absorbed interest in the physical universe, he will very likely come to a solution of duality by recognizing only matter as real and looking upon spirit or life as a byproduct, an epiphenomenon. There is a materialism, in the ethical sense of the word, which is synonymous with a coarse indulgence in the material pleasures of life. The man who desires but wealth and pleasure, food, drink, and material comfort is, in that sense, a materialist. We should distinguish such a materialism sharply from a true philosophical materialism. The philosophical materialist may be ascetic in his mode of life, dedicated to others, utterly forgetful of himself in his endeavours to improve the lot of humankind. Yet, in his approach to the fundamental problems of duality, he will consider the world of spirit, life or consciousness as vague and unreal, and proclaim matter to be the only and final reality, mind or consciousness being but a result of material processes. In his observation of the world around him, he sees that when the material form is destroyed or impaired, life or consciousness no longer manifests itself, and his conclusion is that with the destruction of the form of life which was its result has ceased to be also. To him, human character is but the outcome of the functioning of the body. Can he not prove that when certain glands are atrophied or do not function properly, the character of the person in question changes accordingly, whereas the implanting of a fresh gland will restore the previous characteristics? In this materialistic view of the universe, the ultimate reality is the atom, the unit of matter. Yet, when we ponder over the latest contributions of physics towards the nature of matter, when we read of the ultimate atom as a form of energy, charges of negative electricity moving around a positive core, we may well ask if the materialistic solution of the problem of duality can any longer be called materialistic. The materialist definition of the ultimate material unit and the idealist definition of the ultimate spirit unit are not as different as we would expect. And who shall say that what one calls the monad and what the other calls the atom are not one and the same thing? Thus, in a materialistic monism, the world of matter around us is seen as the one and only reality, life or consciousness as but a byproduct of physical processes. Very different is the solution of that type of man who is intensely concentrated on the world within. With some, the cause of this may be a certain world shyness, a fear for a material world and for their fellow men which causes them to shrink back into themselves. The idealism of such, however, is but a pseudo-idealism. Yet we must not underrate the measure in which failure to cope with the powerful material world surrounding man influences his outlook upon that world. World negation and world denial have but too often been the retreat from a world which was too much for man. There is, on the other hand, a true idealism which is rooted in an intense realization of life, consciousness or mind and its creative activity. That which absorbs the idealist most is not the diversity of material forms, not their accurate observation and classification, but the power of life or consciousness over these forms. The fact that in all evolution we can recognize a dynamic creative principle moulding form from within. Above all, the outstanding fact that man himself can recreate this world of matter around him, can rise triumphantly over his environment. Thus, the importance and reality of that outer world retreat into the background. Life, spirit or mind becomes the ultimate reality, matter or form but an idea existing in a mind. The objects surrounding us in the world which appears to us so real are denied an objective reality, and are but seen as images or ideas arising either in our own mind or in the mind of some superior being. Minds and their ideas are the supreme reality in an idealistic monism. The idealist denies reality to the material world, looks upon it as secondary, and upon mind or spirit as primary. There are many shades both of materialism and idealism, but the characteristics given above are typical for most. They solve the problem of duality by denying the reality of one of its two terms and presenting that as but an aspect or byproduct of the other.